All right. Well, they're lying to us about the measles outbreak. At least they're lying in some places and not others. The media is spinning this. Are you surprised? 2 children have died in Texas with the measles, but the media is simplifying this as saying measles outbreak due to lack of vaccination. And now HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has switched his position on the measles vaccine, strangely. Dr. Robert Malone is writing about this every other day, basically, on his Substack, on his newsletter, and you should read it. He's an internationally recognized scientist and physician, one of the original inventors of the mRNA vaccine as a technology. He says we're getting a lot of propaganda right now, and he joins us because, in fact, these deaths may, he says, have been caused by a medical error, which he writes is the third leading cause of death in the United States. So what? Dr. Malone, thank you for joining us. Can you give us a rundown of these 2 deaths and what the media is telling us versus the reality?
So the claims are that these are deaths from measles. We've all experienced this kind of sleight of hand in media positioning during the COVID crisis, where we saw the overcounting of deaths attributed to COVID, whether or not they were actually caused by COVID or whether the individual that unfortunately passed away had another condition that was the proximal cause of death, but in addition had a PCR positive test in a nasal swab typically. And
Right.
if so, then the kind of the default protocol was that such deaths would be declared as a death from COVID, even if the individual had been in a major automobile accident or had a gunshot wound to the head. So here in the case of measles can kill, that's clear, but it's extremely rare in healthy children. This is very much like COVID. And if you have children that have a major pre-existing condition or some other medical complication, measles is immunosuppressive, and it can exacerbate whatever the pre-existing problem is and set those children up for other infections. So in the case of this outbreak in West Texas, unclear the original origin of the measles virus entering into a religious community that has historically refused vaccination, as is the case with many. The virus spread rapidly because measles is incredibly infective. And it spread rapidly through that community, and it has affected some of the surrounding members that have been vaccinated because the measles vaccine is, let's say gently, far from perfect in terms of its protection and in terms of its adverse events. What is really at the front of this right now is the weaponization of fear around this. This outbreak is actually smaller than, for instance, the one in Ontario, Canada, that none of us have heard about. There's typically multiple outbreaks in the United States and in particular in Europe and throughout the world every single year. Now, previously, the United States was considered to have eradicated measles because they had not had one of these major outbreaks for a period of time, a little over a year. But now, as is often the case, we are having such outbreaks. And the press is amplifying this and immediately weaponized it as an attack against the new Secretary of HHS, as if he was responsible for this longstanding religious community policy of not accepting these vaccines. And these accusations came almost immediately after his confirmation. So it's patently absurd on the face, but that's the play that's ongoing. And the fear porn, or what I call psychological bioterrorism, much akin to the psychological bioterrorism that was going on about the infectious disease avian influenza that you covered in your earlier segment, as apparently having some component there of enhancing the business opportunity for certain egg producers. Here, what we have is media amplifying fear, spreading fear. Fear sells. Fear gets clicks and likes and follows and views. And in particular, talking about deaths of children. Unfortunately, when you look at the details, the clinical records of these two children that, for instance, the New York Times and many others are asserting were deaths from measles, what you find is that in this area of West Texas, there appears to be a problem of, let's say gently, medical competence. And in both
Right.
of
And
these
so
cases,
don't you think that's the headline? Because I read this as a mother.
obviously,
And I'm terrified because the father said she needs a nebulizer. She didn't get it. The other one got the wrong antibiotic. This is, if they really want to scare me, this is the real story.
I agree with you. And what just came out, dropped from Children's Health Defense, is that Pierre Corey was able to get access through CHD to the actual medical records of this most recent hospitalization. And what it reveals is an unfortunate young female child that had, at some point, measles. Her presentation with measles corresponds to when she was hospitalized. She had a pre-existing thrush infection, so this is a yeast infection, an indication of immunosuppression. And while she was in the hospital where she developed this measles rash, she had some ineffective antibiotic treatment. Mm-hmm. It reduced her symptoms. They discharged her. She immediately got worse. She came back into the hospital. They misdiagnosed what now we see is clearly a hospital-acquired multi-drug resistant E. coli infection that was the source of her pneumonia, and they did not treat it properly. So this is, as with the prior case, this is another case of where a hospital team, an ICU team, intensive care unit team, had, it appears, a bias. They repeatedly put into the clinical notes that that this person, this young child, had measles, and that was the explanation. She had measles pneumonia, but in fact she didn't. So they had some sort of a cognitive bias that this must be measles, and as a consequence, they didn't run down the other parts of the differential diagnosis, and it turned out that in fact what she had was a sepsis, a pneumonia, and the culture results indicate that it was from a multi-drug resistant E. coli that she probably picked up in the prior hospitalization. The hospital is dug in on this. They insist that this was a measles death, but there is no autopsy report. There is no death certificate. This is I don't know what else to call it. This is propaganda or covering their backside at the hospital, appropriating a media trope of the lethality of measles, it appears, in order to hide their own malfeasance.
It's shocking. It's shocking, and it's terrifying to think that you could go into a hospital for help and they could miss things that they could have treated if they were just being more thorough. And so,
or if it's your child.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is visiting the families, and he's saying things that are contradictory to what he has said before. He's always said that the MMR vaccine should be a personal choice and that we need to have more more studies about it. And he just said the other day that the most effective way to prevent the spread of measles is the MMR vaccine, which is surprising. It's a surprising backtrack of what we have seen.
Stop for a minute. Okay. That statement is not the same as saying go out and get the measles vaccine.
Okay. Fair enough.
The press and the MAHA base is taking that and running with it, and they're misunderstanding what they're reading. Both sides have their own problems with actually listening to words and appreciating what's being said. What Bobby is saying there is truly accurate. We have no other good tools for slowing the spread of measles. Measles is incredibly infectious. It has if you followed my Substack, it has an R naught that's in the 8 to 10 range. This is among one of the most infectious viruses possible. And even a partially effective measles vaccine will slow the spread of this virus. And we have no other things other than that. Now, that's perhaps a fault of the medical establishment because it's obsessed with vaccination as the only solution. And so what Bobby's saying there is technically accurate, just to say
Okay.
it.
All
It's
right.
not the same as saying you all ought to go out and get your measles vaccine immediately. That is not what he said.
Okay. So then we'll come off the ledge there because the media,
Thank you.
you're right. The MAHA base is saying, how dare you say that? We trusted you, right? So he's actually saying something that's reasonable.
Everyone's so ready to be disappointed,
Bobby calls
Dr.
me
Malone.
from time to time. All right.
Yeah.
And the other day he called me out of the blue. I never call him, as you would imagine. It's a little bit of a power difference there.
It's intimidating, maybe.
He assured me that there are things in play right now that will really be strongly supported by the base. Now, I don't know what he's got in the oven, but I really suggest that people back off a little bit, like you say, walk back off the ledge, give him a little bit of time, and have faith. This is a guy that has spent the last third of his career passionately pursuing these issues. And to think that he's somehow going to abandon his principles because he has the privilege of being HHS secretary, that's a job I wouldn't want to have. He is up to his eyeballs in alligators right now, totally overwhelmed by the tyranny of the urgent, and doing his best to fight battles on multiple fronts, including from the bloody New York Times and the corporate media about all this. And now he's getting shot at by his base. So just take a deep breath, relax a minute, have some faith in the guy. I'm confident that over the next few weeks, you'll see some things like the Peter Marks firing. You know, the Peter Marks firing was all about getting access to VAERS. Peter Marks was blocking VAERS. Well, why is that important? Well, because we want to analyze VAERS. Why is that important? Because we're all pretty darn sure that there is some interesting information in VAERS that is going to teach us about the risks of this RNA vaccine and the risks of vaccines in general. So just take a deep breath, step back for a minute, and be careful.
That's why we have you.
In DC communication, be careful that you're reading what they're saying and not projecting what you think they're saying.
Right.
I like Dr. Malone's bedside manner. When everyone's panicking, you can tell that's tried and true. Yeah. Dr. Robert Malone, always great to see you. Longtime guest here on the show. You were one of the very few out there fighting the good fight at the very beginning of this whole COVID nightmare. You were censored, you were banned, you were blocked, you were vilified, you were canceled. But we're glad that we're able to have you back here. It's great that you were vindicated in all of this. Dr. Malone, thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Hey, we want to tell you a story about Genucel, and we start with this great, refreshing, and heartwarming story. It's story time. A lady named Phyllis walked into a neighborhood pharmacy in New Jersey and asked the pharmacist for an antioxidant cream for wrinkles. The pharmacist says, okay, well, I'll compound one and come back tomorrow. Phyllis uses the cream for 3 days, goes back to her dermatologist, the doctor, and just looking at her thinks, have you got work done? And Phyllis tells everyone about the pharmacy and the pharmacist who made this special magical skin cream. Believe it or not, that is how Genucel skincare was born. That was 25 years ago. Genucel shipped millions of orders, yet they have the same philosophy of antioxidants, same natural base, same chef in the kitchen. Now, Genucel is celebrating 25 years and offering the best pricing since Phyllis walked into the pharmacy of a nice pharmacist named George all those years ago. Right now, you can save an extra 50% off membership pricing at Genucel's complete skincare package featuring their under eye bags and puffiness treatment, jawline sculpting treatment, and immediate effects for results in just minutes. So look 5, 10, 15 years younger, guaranteed, or your money back. So check it out for yourself. Go to Genucel.com/redacted. Every order includes free shipping and use the code redacted at checkout for even extra discount. One more time, that's Genucel, GENUCEL.com/redacted, Genucel.com/redacted. Well, the Texas Attorney General has launched an investigation into Kellogg over their use of dangerous food dyes and other chemicals. They say that Kellogg has known that these products are dangerous for a very long time because they cannot sell them in Europe, but they willingly continued to sell them to Americans. Well, Vani Hari has been covering this on her profile on X, which is at the Food Babe or just foodbabe.com. One of the things she covered specifically is how big food gets in the way of the right decisions for politicians. And she joins us today to discuss. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Welcome back.
Yeah. So tell us why you're so excited about this investigation from Ken Paxton's office and what this may be the beginning of.
Yeah, he's, Ken Paxton, he's a new sheriff in town. He's going to lasso up Kellogg's like cattle and show them who's boss finally. Kellogg's is one of those companies that unfortunately has just been lying to the American public for so long. Back in 2015, they decided to remove artificial food dyes from their products like they sell in so many other countries like Canada and Australia, Korea, India, all of Europe. And instead of doing that, they actually started to create new cereals targeting the toddlers of today, using the most popular toddler songs like Baby Shark cereal and Disney's Little Mermaid and Peeps. It's coming up for Easter here. There's a Peeps cereal with all kinds of artificial food dyes in them. You know, these artificial food dyes are linked to hyperactivity in children. The way that they're produced from petroleum and coal tar, they become contaminated with carcinogens. So they're linked to cancer. This is one of the reasons why red number 3, for example, was recently banned from by the FDA because they looked at these studies and they saw that they cause cancer in animal studies. But this is something that's being inundated in cereals and all kinds of products across the United States. But our big food companies, PepsiCo, Kellogg's, General Mills, Coca-Cola, and others have taken out these dyes for so many other countries, but continue to serve us this poison. Back in 2010, European regulators put a warning label, a cigarette type warning label on any product that had artificial food dyes. And instead of putting that warning label on their product, Big Food decided to remove these chemicals, reformulate their products using things like blueberry and carrot juice and paprika and beta carotene in their products in other countries, but didn't do this for their own American citizens. And I think that this is one of the most hypocritical double standards that exists within the food industry. And the reason I took on Kellogg's is because not only did they lie and say they were going to do this back in 2015, and they said they were going to do it by 2018, and they never did, but they're targeting little children. And when my daughter was just 2 years old in 2019, and she picked up a box of that Baby Shark cereal, I was excited. I was like, oh, they've taken out artificial food dyes. Let me look at the ingredients. And I couldn't believe that they were creating new products with this. And now, because of Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s incredible leadership under President Trump and taking the voice of me and so many other moms out there and dads that have risen these issues up into the national conversation about how we are tired of the American food companies serving us a less safe version of their products to us here in America when they've already figured out how to make their product better and safer for citizens in other countries. And when we look at the dire rates of disease in this country, the obesity, the cancer, the heart disease rates, and how we have the most out of any developing country, the fact that 38% of preteens are being diagnosed with pre-diabetes, but we have Fruit Loops saying that Fruit Loops is low fat, healthy cereal, good source of vitamins and minerals.
Yeah.
Ken Paxton is going to hold this company accountable, not only for the fact that they lied to consumers in Texas by saying they're going to remove these dyes, but the fact that they're saying that the cereal is healthy. This cereal is not only full of artificial food dyes, but it's mostly filled with genetically engineered corn and sugar that starts with a seed that's designed to withstand heavy doses of Roundup, which has glyphosate in it, which is linked to cancer and implicated in court cases across the United States to cause cancer. Then you've got, not only these additives in it, but literally it's synthetic vitamins and minerals that they're adding to poisonous ingredients. And this is something that finally someone's holding big food accountable. And I have to tell you something, when this came out, I was so excited because we took over 400,000 signatures to Battle Creek, Michigan, to give Kellogg's a clue, like they need to do something about this. Instead, they showed us signs in their windows that said, "Get off our lawn." Well, that didn't work because that took, not only made me mad, but it made leaders like RFK Jr. mad to the point where he said, the first thing I'm going to do is get food companies to remove these artificial food dyes. And this is exactly what he did in the meeting where he met with many big food leaders and asked them to do this. But what it's now doing is it's getting other important things to happen, like this new investigation in Texas. And the funny thing is when I saw the AG Ken Paxton announce his run for Senate, I thought, he's just trying to get popular by taking on this very popular issue with the MAHA moms and all of that. And that's not the case. So when I went to go thank him on Instagram, he reached out to me back in September of last year. He must have heard my Senate testimony where I first talked about these issues and reached out to me and wanted to talk about this. And I had just missed it. And so I was I was so excited to see that he was, on my radar back in September, way before all this momentum we've had on these issues. And so thank you, Ken Paxton, for looking at this. I'm excited that we're running for the Senate. I think we need more people running for the Senate that are looking at food as medicine and trying to hold big food accountable. Now, this is just the first attorney general taking this on. I see in my future many other states start to do this too, looking at their state laws, looking how Kellogg's has potentially violated that by not only lying to consumers, saying they're going to do one thing and they never did, but also, advertising their product as healthy when it's clearly not.
Yeah,
Kellogg's, I think maybe most people don't know this, and I'd like to tell this quick story, is the original sinner in bringing the idea of processed carbohydrates into the American diet. And that came, maybe most people don't know this, from Ellen G. White, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, when she had a dream that we should only eat like the Garden of Eden and eat no meat or animal products and only fruits and vegetables. The person who typeset her book was John Preston Kellogg, who then went on to use the Seventh-day Adventist Church to infiltrate the government in order to pervert the food pyramid and make Americans think that this was a convenience food. So they've been selling us this since 1863. So it's not just the processed, the ingredients is the processed food. It's the processed food at all from the inception, bringing us away from an animal-based diet. So for me, I want all of that, not just these little components, but the history too. The problem is that a libertarian argument might be, well, then just Americans should see this for themselves, see their health declining and reject it. But if you look into how food is engineered to be addictive, like cigarettes, like alcohol, like drugs, a great book on that is The Dorito Effect, then that argument doesn't hold because of the predatory marketing and the engineering of the food to be addictive, right?
Yeah, you mentioned The Dorito Effect. That's an incredible book, and it really uncovers this issue of the fact that the majority of foods in grocery store shelves, the processed dead food that you see in the middle of the aisles that are packaged and can be left on the shelf for many, many months, that food wouldn't taste good if it wasn't for this specific flavoring ingredient called natural flavor or artificial flavor added to it. And you'll see it into 90% of packaged goods, because when something sits on a shelf, it not only loses flavor, but a lot of times they're not using real food ingredients. And so they have to that cover up all the man-made chemicals that they're putting together and food-like substances that they're putting together in this processed food. And so they're looking at these flavoring components that they can create in a laboratory. They can create the 1 millionth best part of a taste to literally hijack your brain. What I want to ask is how can humans even compete against a robot that PepsiCo, for example, has to mimic human taste buds? How can humans actually handle the science and go beyond that and like live a healthy life and eat these products? They can't. And that's why you have to go to real food. And this is one of the aha moments that a lot of people need to recognize is the tobacco companies unlock this flavoring component and how it can trick your brain and how they got us addicted to cigarettes. Well, they started to use that same technology towards food when they started buying up the food companies several years ago. And so this is something that's inherent in creating addiction and getting us to spend more money at the grocery store on these products and eat more than what our body can handle, because literally they've figured out how to turn off our society, and so that our stomachs become more full before our brain recognizes it with the technology that they're using. And one of the most sinister things that's happening right now is that because of the rise of Ozempic, they are concerned that people are snacking less, and they think that is a huge threat to their profits. And so they're already conducting science on how to circumvent the GLP-1 drugs in their products and what chemicals that they can put in the food and processed food products, so that if you are someone who's taking Ozempic thinking you are going to get thin and continue to eat the way you are, well, think again, because big food is going to figure out a way to hook you to their product.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, and if you think about like we lived in Europe for 5 years, and you go to the grocery store, you don't see any of these American cereals on the store shelves for a reason. And we think, oh, the Kellogg's, it's a great American company. They probably have our Americans' best interest at heart.
But we should be careful to not romanticize European food. It is not the panacea that you think it is. It's just a rejection of certain components. They have their own.
Oh, the dye, specifically yellow dye, red dye, et
plenty
cetera.
of crappy European
Well,
foods.
I mean, just looking at the sheer amount of chemicals that are allowed in our food system here, over 10,000 chemicals allowed in our food system, that the food companies have largely gone unregulated. They literally can bypass any kind of third-party review at the FDA because of this grass loophole, generally regarded as safe loophole, that allows the chemical companies that create the chemicals to introduce them into the environment and look at the safety data themselves, or not even have any safety data. And that's the reason why we have 10,000 here, whereas in Europe, there's only close to 400. We have to close that gap. And that is one of the things that Secretary Kennedy is looking at happening with this work that he's doing with the grass loophole, and looking at closing that so that they can not only not allow chemical and food companies to approve chemicals for use themselves, but also go to post-market research and look at the chemicals that have been introduced to our food supply and look at the safety data, and using AI to see what can happen really quickly in terms of getting these additives out of our American diet that don't belong there.
Vani Hari is the food babe. Well, you got to check your DMs, I guess, more often. Ken Paxton's reaching out to you. You're not paying attention to him. Thank you for the great work that you've been doing. Thank you for educating all of us about this. And yeah, I hope, like you, more of these attorneys general across the United States will take up this banner. Thank you, Vani. Great to see you again.
Thank you. Take care.